The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon based on where you're located in the region. And thanks so much for joining today's webcast presented by Sage AP Automation. My name is Ali Ortiz, and I am the ISV Program Manager here at Sage. Just a few logistical items before we get started. The presentation will be around 45 minutes, so we will have time for questions at the end. So please enter those in the Q&A panel on your screen, and we will make sure to go through those. The webcast is also being recorded, so we can distribute the recording and a PDF of the slides next week. With that said, I will go ahead and pass it over to Kevin Hafachuk from Sage AP Automation to kick off the presentation.
Thanks very much, Ali. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our webinar, Ending the Paper Chase in Accounts Payable. My name is Kevin. I'll be your host for today's webinar, and I'm an account executive here at Sage Accounts Payable Automation. I work with clients to understand their AP workflow. Together, we make a path using automation to meet their goal of reducing time spent on manual tasks so they can focus on higher value tasks. Today, we're going to discuss the risks and challenges of relying on paper in accounts payable and what you need in order to optimize your financial health. Throughout the presentation, we'll share some use cases that illustrate the real-world impact automation is having on organizations who embrace it. We'll finish with a product demo and a Q&A session. Please feel free to use the Q&A function on your screens at any time during the webinar, and we'll answer those questions at the end. Traditionally, accounts payable has been a paper-heavy process. The use of paper invoices and checks has always been the standard. Even as automation grows in popularity, payments with paper checks still make up 40% of all transactions. The problem is that paper is messy and carries a significant number of liabilities. Not only can physical documents be lost or damaged, but they can also be impossible to access if teams are working remotely. They also leave organizations vulnerable to fraud. Now, before we take a closer look at the risks of paper, I'd like to take a quick poll to understand how many invoices your team processes per month. So A, 0 to 75, B, 76 to 150, C, 151 to 300, D, 301 to 500, or E, 501 plus.
All right, I have launched the poll, so if everyone can take a minute and answer it, I'll leave it open for a few more seconds.
Thank you, Ali.
All right. And
I should have queued up the Jeopardy theme song here.
Yeah, right. All right, I'm going to close it out in 3, 2, 1.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone, for participating. We'll have one more of those a little bit later. The simple fact of the matter is that physical documents get lost. The Association for Intelligent Information Management states that 7.5% of all documents get lost, and another 3% are misfiled. That means that 1 in 10 documents are either completely inaccessible or will require an extensive amount of time to track down. Just how much time is wasted? According to the Economic Times, employees waste as much as 25% of their time hunting down the information needed to do their job. If hunting for records isn't time-consuming enough, relying on paper invoices, checks, and expense reports also creates tedious data entry. It's boring and, frankly, error-prone. Surveys have found that 76% of office workers spend up to 3 hours a day on data entry. In accounts payable, it's particularly easy for time spent on the process to balloon as employees must enter data into multiple systems. The prospect of data entry errors exasperates the problem. When dealing with paper, it's quite easy for invoices to wind up lost in the approval process. This issue has been complicated by the number of teams working remote or on hybrid schedules. This was one of the biggest challenges Elemental Energy faced. According to controller Tania Ontiveros, she indicated that approvals went through a mix of information channels based on department needs. Payments over a certain threshold required the CEO's sign-off, and then follow-ups were conducted via email, but the process could be laborious if the approvers requested backup records. Automation, on the other hand, allow for approvals to immediately route to the right person, creating a digital paper trail and ensuring no documents get lost in the mix. In addition to obvious benefits like speed and efficiency, AP automation can have a great impact on your vendor relationships. That was the case for our client, DreamPack. In 2019, DreamPack was relying entirely on paper-based accounts payable processes. One of the top priorities for Walid Gamay, DreamPack's Vice President of Operations, was to tackle his finance team's significant delays in vendor payments. One major complication was that Gamay was on the East Coast and they were doing check runs from one of their facilities in the Midwest. Relying on disjointed paper-based processes became a nightmare for the company, ultimately leading to some vendors receiving payments after the due date and some not receiving them at all. We all understand that businesses want to get paid on time, especially in times of economic uncertainty. When your processes stand in the way of making timely, consistent payments, it can damage your relationship with vendors and suppliers. That's a big reason DreamPack turned to AP automation. Within a few weeks of implementing Sage AP automation, DreamPack started receiving invoices electronically and paying vendors through ACH. They moved approvals into the cloud, prioritized payments based on due dates, and scaled their AP operations by eliminating information silos. Unlike earlier, when he received a stack of checks to sign and mail every week, now he simply logs into Sage AP and approves payments based on priority. Gamay said they have shortened the payment processes from weeks to days. He added, whether locally on site or anywhere in the world, I can approve orders, invoice, and payments at the click of a button, whether on my computer or my mobile device. When you consider the positive impact that has not just on the internal processes, but their external relationships, you start to see how you can improve the overall health of your business by moving away from such paper-heavy manual processes. Of course, when you talk about drowning in paper processes, it's impossible to ignore the financial cost as well. A rough way to estimate the cost of manually processing an invoice is to consider the cost of 30 minutes of labor from an AP employee. In general, this will range from $12 to $35. The price of manually processing paper checks is equally steep. A single check can cost between $4 and $20, and it is estimated that businesses in the United States spend almost $160 billion sending and receiving paper payments. With the nature of modern workplace changing, reliance on paper has gone from impractical and inconvenient to an impediment hindering a team's ability to function. With so many organizations continuing to embrace remote and hybrid work, it's important to ask, how has this impacted the accounts payable process? For teams relying on paper processes, employees working remote lack access to the physical files they need to perform their job. There can also be a lack of visibility due to siloed systems. Without proper integrations, data stored in one system is not accessible from another and may be completely inaccessible to employees working out of office. Manual processes also create bottlenecks as an employee. Wait for invoices to get signed off. Papers can get lost in the shuffle, buried in an approver's inbox, leaving your AP in a state of limbo. Adopting automation helps eliminate both of these concerns. Because data is centralized on the cloud, it can be accessed from any location at any time. A good automation software will also integrate with things like your accounting software, meaning that all of your information is readily available. An automation solution also allows you to set up custom approval workflows. Invoices are immediately sent to the appropriate approver, and regular reminders are then issued until the invoice has been signed off, reducing the amount of time that employees are left waiting. The Association for Institutional Research, or AIR, is a great example of a group that leveraged the AP automation and came out of the pandemic just as strong as they went into it, if not stronger. AIR was well prepared for the shift to remote work. They had already started digitizing their processes before the pandemic hit in 2020. AIR's Director of Finance, Charlie McCumber, told us, "We had been preparing for the pandemic without knowing it. Going with Sage AP automation made things a million times easier. People can send documents around the system, reject them, and kick them back if needed. It's very manageable for the small accounting team that we have." Since that conversation, AIR has completed their shift to being a fully remote organization and just recently closed on the sale of their former office in Tallahassee, Florida. Another great example of an organization that embraced AP automation as the world around them changed is Raddison Hotel Group. Let's take a deeper look at the issues that made them pursue automation and the ways it has changed their organization. In 2021, Raddison was bouncing back nicely from the pandemic. They entered the year set to add 23 properties to their North American portfolio, but that increase in business came at a time when the workplace had been redefined around the world. With more remote and hybrid workers, their AP workflow needed to change, and the biggest pain point was paper. Their AP team was dealing with a time-consuming, paper-based process for approving invoices and signing checks. At one hotel, the AP team was spending about 3 hours per day on AP-related tasks. Data entry was the next big concern. Keying in invoices was taking 30 to 40% of their week. These manual routines resulted in delays. There are about 10 different approvers at one hotel, and delays were often caused as approvers were not just around staff. Staff had to physically deliver invoices to the accounting department. This became difficult or even impossible during remote work. It all added up to a lengthy and frustrating process that was prone to errors and low visibility into accurate financial data. Let's break down their software selection process and the results that came with an automated solution. First, the hotel has been able to address one of its number one priorities, transitioning from paper to the cloud. They've removed 85 to 90% of paper from AP overall. And with this, error rate is now down to 0%. Sage AP Automation's AI-powered tech automatically captures line item details, including descriptions, unit costs, and quantities, removing the need for data entry. With these changes, several AP teams at the Raddison Hotel Group are now spending less than 50% of their time per week on AP-related tasks. The next change was a remote-friendly process, making AP workflows accessible via mobile and web. Vendors are now sending invoices electronically directly into the software. The team can also upload or import them online without diving into a pool of paper and files. Managers are notified about approvals automatically. They can sign off from a mobile app or through the browser, whatever suits them best at that time. Raddison CFO at the Minneapolis branch says managers are now approving invoices every single day. It has also made their month-end process a smooth and easy experience. Invoices are coming into their GL much quicker than before. The end result is a company that cleaned up challenging processes and remade them in a way that can guide the organization through any challenges the future may hold. Now, we're going to turn our attention to fraud and how reliance on paper-based practices leaves you vulnerable to it. Fraud has always been a concern for financial departments, But during times of crisis and uncertainty, it becomes especially difficult. As organizations adopt a new way of operating, scammers are better able to spot weak spots to take advantage of. That's one reason that occupational fraud rose by 90% in the first year of the pandemic. And while the pandemic may not be the crisis it was 2 years ago, economic uncertainty is starting to fill the void. People are nervous as potential recession looms, which makes it as important as ever to have full visibility to your AP process. 71% of finance professionals state that lack of visibility into the AP process left their company vulnerable to fraud. This lack of visibility is tied directly to the increase in remote and hybrid work environments while still relying on old-fashioned AP processes. We spoke with a business called Hearn Industrial about how automation helped them combat financial fraud. Their financial accountant, Derek, says, "We received an invoice that was completely fraudulent, but looked like an invoice that we normally receive. It was uploaded to Sage AP Automation and routed to the approver. They instantly rejected as a fraudulent invoice." This is a great example of automation providing safeguards against fraud. The software allows you to set up an approval matrix, setting parameters that can require multiple managers to approve invoices over a certain amount. You can also separate duties so that the person who approves an invoice is not the same as the person who distributes the funds. So, how can you mitigate the risk? Firstly, we recommend having at least 2 levels of approval. Next, by separating roles for approvals and payments, you reduce the chances for funds to be rerouted or otherwise misappropriated. Delegation of authority. This applies primarily to determining who should have the authority for specified spending limits within certain categories of expenditure. Security awareness training. Train your team to recognize and handle different types of attacks, including BEC, phishing, and spam campaigns. Warn your staff about these scams and give them a central in-house contact where they can verify requests they may receive. And lastly, adopt multi-factor authentication for important processes such as recovering email accounts and wire transfer payments. Many companies are under the impression their paper-based policies provide strong internal controls. In reality, the increased sophistication of scammers and opportunities for human error make it much more difficult to minimize the risk of loss without the aid of technology. AP automation can greatly improve your risk management capabilities through improved visibility, tracking, and controlling invoice and payment processes. Multiple online approval channels create accountability and allow for verification of vendors and detection of suspicious invoices. It flags duplicate invoices and payments. And an automated solution also restricts paying unapproved invoices until the approvals process is complete. CFOs have tighter control of who approves invoices and when payments are made, so they can manage risk and financial loss to the company at a broader level. Okay, now I'll walk you through how to perform a health check on your accounting processes and key questions you should be asking yourselves. We're going to take a look at 3 main areas: workflows, approval process, and fraud controls. The questions you should be asking to assess how strong your accounting practices are and identify potential issues here. When assessing your workflows, you should be asking yourself the following questions. How many staff are dedicated to AP functions? What percentage of their time or what percentage of their day is spent on data entry, processing invoices, payments, expense management? how many invoices are processed monthly per FTE, and how much does it cost to process an invoice? Moving on to the approval process. Research has found that following up on invoices that haven't been approved on time is a lengthy process that can take up to 20% of a typical AP clerk's time. When reviewing the approval process for your AP workflows, you should ask yourselves, how many full-time employees manage the approval process? How long does it take for approvers to approve an invoice? How much time is spent managing approvals weekly, monthly, and annually? This will help you to identify any bottlenecks and areas you need to improve. And finally, fraud controls. As mentioned earlier, we have seen an increase in fraud since the beginning of the pandemic. Regularly reviewing your fraud controls is essential. Here are a few questions you should ask yourself. Do you run security awareness training for employees? Do you have a process if vendors wish to change their bank information? And how do you stay up to date with best practices? Scammers are becoming increasingly sophisticated, so it's important, or it's more important than ever, that you have a way to stay up to date on the latest scams so you can inform your team and update your controls. Now, we're going to go into a quick product demonstration so you can see how Sage AP automation actually works. Get you signed in here, and we'll walk you through that now. Amazing, everyone. So this is the Sage AP automation platform. Now, I'll start off with just giving you a quick high-level overview of the user interface to give you a better understanding of what's happening as I show you around the software here today. Now, on the left-hand side of our screen, we can see that we have our 4 core modules listed out here. So expenses for employee reimbursement and expense reporting, purchase orders, invoices, and payments. With invoices for us really going to be the bread and butter of the solution. For today, as we do have some time limits, I'll only be going through the invoice module here for you. We've broken it up so invoices would flow from left to right as they make their way to the next step in the process and eventually end up in this archive tab here, which will function like your new digital filing cabinet. In the middle of the screen, we have our workspace or our work queue. This would be a list of active invoices that you do have within the system here. And then on the left-hand side is where we have our organizational tree. So this is where you can segment your business by entity, by department, by division, by location, really dependent on how you would want to set that up within your system. In this specific example here, we have Green Bean Country Club as the parent company, and then each green node on the left-hand side would be its own Sage instance or company file. And as you can see, each company file can actually be sorted by department as well. So you can break it down into the hierarchies that you may need. What you can do is you can use this as a filtering tool. So if you wanted to unsee all the invoices and dive into one specific department to see all the invoices that have been coded there, then you can just click on that green node and it'll pop up all the invoices that'll be specific to you at that time. Now, within our system, we do allow for unlimited user access. So whether it's 5 people on your AP team and 15 approvers to give you 20 altogether, or you have a gigantic team with 200 people, it's going to be the exact same price for you moving forward as well. And you can base what those people need to see on the restrictions that you can set up within the system. So if you only wanted one person to be able to see their department's invoices, then they may only be able to see that. Likewise, if you only wanted an approver to have access to that approvals tab, then they'd only be able to see that sort of thing. And another feature, because we do have that unlimited user access, if you only wanted potentially your auditors to have read-only access to this archive tab, then you can set that up within our system as well. Now, that's pretty much it for that quick high-level overview. So I'll dive into how we can get those invoices into the system here. And for us, there is 2 main ways. So for the first way that we can get those invoices into the system is going to be based around your emails, or the digital way. The long-term goal of using a solution like Sage AP Automation is you want to try and receive as many copies digitally as possible. And for that reason, we can skip this create step altogether. So for any of those invoices that are getting emailed to you, what we can do is set up we can set up auto forwarding rules from those AP inboxes, or inboxes that you do have, and we can automatically populate those invoices directly into this in progress tab here for immediate processing. Now, if you did have any of those paper copies still kicking around, what you can do is you can hop into this create tab, and instead of having to scan those invoices in one by one or putting a paper in between each one, what you can do is you can actually take a large batch scan of those invoices, upload them into one PDF. You can either drag and drop or add those files here, and it would look something similar like this. So right here, we have 20 invoices listed out on one PDF, but within our system, we have the ability to sort and organize them as well. So easily, just with this one click of a button, you can split those 20 invoices into individual invoices from there. Now, if you did have any multiple page invoices as well, all you'd have to do is just drag and drop, organize those invoices as you see fit, hit save, hit create, and now all those invoices would flow over to the in progress tab to meet up with the already emailed in invoices as well. Now, there is one last way to get the invoices into the system, and that's actually through that mobile app. So if you just take a picture on that mobile app, upload it, it would actually populate into this in progress tab as well. Now, once the invoice gets into the system, what's going to happen is it's going to go and it's going to scrape all that information directly off this invoice itself. Now, before we get into the coding of the invoices, we do have a direct integration with your Sage accounts. So what we can do is we can pull in the vendor list, the charter of accounts, any of the fields that you may necessarily be coding into. So we can mimic exactly what you guys have within your Sage right now. Now, the system will go and start scraping that information right off the invoice. So the first thing it's going to take and look for is all this header information, and it's going to code it to the left-hand side here for you. So it'll take the legal entity, the vendor, the invoice number. If you have purchase orders within your process and that invoice has a purchase order number on it, the system's going to automatically look for that, and it will be able to match it up in a side-by-side split version. The system will also be able to code the date, the due date, the total, the subtotal, the taxes if applicable for you as well. And then at this point, the only thing we'd have to worry about are getting those line item details coded for you, but we do have a couple of ways of doing that as well. So the first one would be for any reoccurring invoices. So say you were always coding this Cavallo invoice the same way to the same accounts. Maybe the totals are a little bit different. What we can do is use this smart code feature. So what smart code does is it remembers the way that invoice was coded the last time, and it would just automatically populate down below, coding your entire invoice for you. Typically what we hear, that's about 50% of everybody's invoices. Now, for potentially the other 50%, maybe they're more one-offs, multiple line items, things like that. We also have a feature called line item capture. So it's not only going to code the header information for you, but it'll also code all of the line item details. So descriptions, quantities, unit price, line total would all automatically be coded down below, very similarly to the way this invoice is coded here. Now, one cool aspect about that as well is if Motorola E815 has come in as a description before, and say you've already related it to a specific account code, like maybe office supplies, then that relationship will actually maintain moving forward. So the next time this description comes in, the system's going to remember the way you coded it and automatically apply it for the next time. Now, lastly, let's just say you do have a purchase order heavy process. What we can do is actually adopt the line items directly off the PO itself. So if there was a perfect match, then we're just going to be able to pull those line items directly on there using that PO adoption feature there. Now, if there isn't a perfect match, our system can notify you, flag if there's a variance or not, and let you know right off the bat. Now, once that invoice is fully coded, the next step in the process would be to review it, make sure everything looks good, and then just submit that for approval. And in the back end, what we can do is create approval routing rules to ensure that that invoice is going to go to the correct person or set of people within your organization based off of whatever criteria you need, whether it's dollar amount threshold and department, or if you're basing it off of a PO variance, we can set it up to match exactly what you guys need. So what your approvers are going to be able to see within the system is generally this dashboard, and they're going to be working off that. So if you had multiple invoices to approve, you could either go in, batch approve or reject those invoices, or you can dive in, take a look at the images of the invoices, all of the line item detail coding to make sure it's correct. And then one of the amazing things is you'll have a full audit log if, say, somebody approved it prior to you, or if somebody rejected it, you'll have full capabilities and full access to that audit log right here on this left-hand side. Now, your approvers will get notification by email, notifying them once a day until those approvals are done. On that email will be a hyperlink into each invoice so they can click into that invoice. It'll take them straight back to this screen here where they can approve within a few clicks of buttons. Now, secondly, if you're opening that email on your phone and click into that hyperlink, it's actually going to take you straight back to our mobile app where they can, if they're walking to their office or if they're at lunch break or something like that, they can either approve or reject from there as well. Now, last thing to note is if you are rejecting an invoice or a purchase order within the system, it's going to be mandatory to leave a comment. Now, that's to cut down on any of that email follow-up or phone calls back and forth around the office. So all the approval communication will actually stay within the system here. Now, once those invoices are fully approved, they're going to flow over to this export tab. And this export tab is where we're going to get all that invoice information back into your financial system. So really simply, all you'll have to do is select which invoices you want to send back, hit actions, export selected, data, and then all that invoice information will flow back into your Sage like you've been manually coding it in there the entire time. Now, lastly, once it moves over, once you've exported it, it'll also flow over to this archive tab here. And this archive tab will function like your new digital filing cabinet. So for us, as soon as the invoice gets into this in progress tab or gets into the system, we're actually going to be able to start tagging to vendor, to accounts, to invoice numbers. So any of that data would be searchable through this global search function. Or what we can do is actually mimic if you're filing away by vendor or filing away by date range, you can use these filters on the left-hand side. Say like this here, I have ABC Furniture as this filter. And if I click into that, it's going to populate all the invoices for ABC Furniture, just like that. Now, on this screen as well, you can create reports in CSV or PDF formats, which will allow and create more visibility for your higher-ups or auditors for that reason as well. Now, that is a small taste into what Sage AP Automation can accomplish. That's one of the 4 modules that we can tackle for you. So I hope you enjoyed what you saw so far. And if you do want to see the rest of the solution or want to dive a little bit more in depth with your process specifically, then please don't hesitate to ask us after, and we can set up a more personalized demonstration for you as well. So I hope you enjoyed the little taste that you saw here today. Now we can hop back into the presentation. Here. So before we close out with our Q&A, we wanted to do one more poll question to help our team gauge potential next steps following today's webinar. Now that you've learned some of the benefits of AP automation and gotten a high-level view of how the tool works, would you be interested in a personalized demo of Sage AP automation for your organization? So as you can see, we have the 4 answers listed out there. Yes, over the next month. B, yes, over the next 1 to 3 months. C, maybe, but I need more information first. Or D, not at this time.
Yes. So the poll is launched. We'll leave it open for a few more seconds to let everyone get their answers in. All right. I am going to close it out in 3, 2, 1. Thanks to everyone who participated.
Awesome, awesome. So this kicks off our Q&A. I know, Ali, I think there has been a few questions there in the chat throughout. So if you want to list some of those out, and we can, do a little fireside chat to end this here.
Perfect. There are lots of questions, so we will get through what we can. And if not, all of them will be sent to Kevin. If we don't hit all of them, he will follow up with you after the webinar.
Exactly.
All right. So let's see. The first question is, most of them came through while you were demoing. Can you filter by vendor?
Yes, absolutely. There's a couple different ways you can do it. You can search the vendor in the global search feature, which will populate all the invoices for that specific vendor. Or like I was showing you in the archive tab there, on the left-hand side of the screen, you can create permanent filters. So if one of those wanted to be vendor, like I did with the ABC furniture, then you can easily just click on that button. It's going to populate all the invoices for that vendor.
All right. The next question is, can each line item be allocated to multiple codes?
Yes, absolutely. So we do have a function within our system that allows you to split a line item to multiple areas.
All right. How do you base pricing?
Pricing is very dynamic, and it's going to be based around your actual workflow. And so if you do want a more accurate price quote, please don't hesitate to ask us. One of our SDRs can provide that for you right off the bat.
Awesome. Great. The next question is, what if there's sales tax and shipping on multiple items on an invoice?
Yep. So our system has the ability to handle that as well. So we have a full integration with the Sage tax codes, so we can pull those in for you, and then we can associate those at the line item level.
Do you need to have a code when inputting the invoice?
Do you need to have a code when inputting the invoice? Not necessarily. I guess it would really depend on your workflow and if those codes were necessary to you.
Awesome. Okay. And then we're getting a lot of questions around what AP automation, what what price list does it go with for Sage? So 100, 300, 50, 500. Can you cover which ones that it integrates with?
Yeah. So everything that you actually just mentioned. So 50, 100, 300, 500, and also Sage Interaction.
Awesome. Next question is there an escalation process for approvers who don't approve invoices timely?
Yeah, for sure. So the system will, you can set up a schedule for the notifications. So whether it's, every 3 days, every 2 days, or even every day for the, the people who might not be very good. I'm pretty sure you're probably thinking of one specific person when you ask that question. They're not very good at approving. So yeah, you can set up a specific schedule for them to be notified.
Great. Can you accept POs from another software?
Yes. So really depends on the workflow. The answer is yes, we can, but it really depends on how it functions with your Sage and your financial system. But it's definitely worth exploring, and might need a little bit more deep diving, but yes, the answer is yes.
If you have different locations you code bills to, can that be added into the account line?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right. Does the system have a way to apply the record retention rules for the state of California?
Might need a little bit more in terms of that question and how that would pertain to your AP process. I can't give a definite answer on that right off the bat without clarifying a little bit more.
All right, no worries. We'll be sure to send you this person's information. You guys can follow up with them offline.
Sounds good.
Do you have a module for applying AR receipts?
We do. Not necessarily a module within our system, but we do have a sister company called Quadient Accounts Receivable, and they would be able to handle that.
Can we review the invoices uploaded and edit them before they're posted?
Absolutely, yeah. So you're likely going to want to review those invoices before they are uploaded and posted. So that's where we were talking about that approval process. So not only is your AP person going to be able to, view them while they're being coded and review them, but also, as you push them through for approval, either your department heads or your CFOs or CEOs can also approve and make sure that they're coded correctly before they actually even hit Sage.
Next question is this product the same as the Sage paperless AP Flow product?
No, so I'm not necessarily super familiar with PaperSave, but I'm pretty sure it's something that's built directly into your Sage. Sage AP Automation is a separate platform that sits on top of Sage and kind of works as the first level of defense. We'll ingest all your invoices and then post them into your Sage.
Next question. We have 38 departments and we track the expenses individually depending on their addresses. Can your software do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we can track those invoices down and code to the specific OCR that you need based around addresses. So, if it's a remittance address or a ship to address, we can tell the system to look for that and help to code it to the correct area from there.
Great. Next question. How are payments issued?
So that's something we didn't necessarily touch on our system, but we do have payment providers that we work with. So you can actually facilitate the payments through our system. So, instead of you having to go and cut manual checks and lick the envelopes and mail them out, or, create batch ACH files in your bank, we can actually do all that within our platform, send out the payments for you, and then, whether it's in a virtual credit card or we can send out checks on your behalf or do ACHs or EFTs as well. And then we have a payment provider that we work with that, helps to facilitate that process.
Right. Tons of questions. Can you split the invoice over multiple codes, not by a line item on the invoice?
Yeah, you can do that.
All right. Next one. Does a person on the AP team have to help the system scrape the information the first time an invoice from a vendor is processed?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it depends if you're using the line item capture feature or not. So if you are using that feature, then the system will take a look at the actual invoice itself, be able to code the descriptions, the quantities, the unit price, the line total, all that information. But the first time you'll have to, associate it with that GL. And then after that, the system will be able to remember the way you coded it.
Are the 4 modules showing individual priced or a package?
Yeah, good question. So in terms of the pricing for that, they are individually priced. So it's kind of like a choose your own adventure book in that sense. Whatever you need within the system, you can pick and choose to use. So, a lot of our clients are just using the invoice module, or, a lot of our clients are using all 4 as well at the same time. But you have the ability to choose which ones you want to use.
What happens if you need to adjust an invoice for some reason after it's been coded, approved, and uploaded to Sage?
Yeah, good. That's a good question as well. So there's a couple of ways to tackle that. One is likely resetting that invoice within our system and then re-uploading it into Sage while deleting the entry in Sage. That is typically what we would see done. And then there's another way you can do it where you can either just create a comment within Beanworks and then change what the invoice says in Sage. But we can dive into that a little bit further as well. And I can show you what that looks like in more of a personalized demo for that.
Awesome. Next question, can we cut the checks ourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of like I was talking about with the Choose Your Own Adventure book. If you just wanted to use us for the invoice processing, and you got, let's just say you have a massive, check stock still kicking around, you can absolutely cut the checks yourselves. Now, the one cool thing about our system is we do have the ability to pull in any of those payment details. So if you create the check within Sage, and you mark that bill as paid within Sage, we're actually going to be able to pull in all of that payment information back into our system, so you can have the true source of record on both sides.
Next question, will this system pull my vendor info already inputted into Sage 100?
Yeah, really good question. So all the vendor management will still be done within your Sage. So at the time of integration, what we're going to be able to do is pull in all of your entire vendor list, all the vendor info, all of the general ledgers, everything that you're normally coding into, that kind of thing as well. We'll import all those lists so they're readily available for you right as we begin our partnership together.
Can Sage still see the vendor history under each vendor in Sage, or do we have to go to the web to find the invoice detail?
Yeah, so you're going to be able to find all of the information that you still have in Sage. So it's going to look exactly like you've been processing those invoices manually. So you'll be able to run any of the reports, see any of the vendor history, same in the exact same feature. But now you have the ability to go and see that in Beanworks as well, or in Sage AP Automation, with things like approval history, comments, anything like that. So you'll have both.
Awesome. Can this be used with Sage 50 desktop, or does it need to be with a cloud-based version?
We work with both. So whether it's the desktop version or the cloud version, we can work with either of them.
Right. And then another question is, can you only use the modules you want, or do you have to use all 4?
Yeah, pick and choose whatever you need, whatever suits your workflow. We'll be able to make it work with you.
Awesome. All right. Well, the remainder of the questions are a little bit more personalized to the organization. So, Kevin, I'm going to let you take those offline and
Sure.
answer those with them. So that concludes our webcast for today. Kevin, thank you so much for walking us through the presentation and demonstration. And to everyone else, thanks so much for joining, and have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ali. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks so much.